CEO marries a girl by contract, but discovers she's a virgin and falls in love. Hello, my beautiful story family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. Yesterday was such a special day. It was my birthday. I had an amazing celebration, but I couldn't stop thinking about all of you. Your heartfelt birthday wishes truly made my day unforgettable. I'm so grateful to have you in my life. You're more than an audience. You're family. Oh, how I wish we could have shared my birthday cake together. Just imagine all of us celebrating, laughing, and making memories. It would have been magical. Before we dive into today's story, tell me, did you enjoy the last one? If you loved it, drop a big yes in the comments below. Now let's get started. The evening sun cast long shadows across Israel Chosen's penthouse office, the golden light catching on the edges of the divorce papers that lay before him. At 35, he had built an empire that spanned continents. Yet in this moment, he felt like that small-town boy who had once dreamed too big. His fingers traced the mahogany desk, a reminder of his first successful business deal, as he stared at his soon-to-be ex-wife's signature, the elegant curves of Adrian's handwriting now seeming as false as their marriage had been. "Mr. Chosen," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "The board is waiting in conference room A." Israel pressed the response button, his voice steady despite the storm raging within. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes." Professional as always, even as his personal life crumbled around him. He stood, adjusting his charcoal Tom Ford suit. Armor, really, against a world that had taught him trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. The wall-to-wall windows of his office offered a panoramic view of the city he'd conquered, skyscrapers reaching toward clouds, painted in shades of amber and rose. 5 years ago, he'd stood in this same spot with Adrian, sharing dreams of their future together. Now those memories felt like scenes from someone else's life. The manila envelope on his desk contained more than just divorce papers. There were photographs, evidence of Adrian's betrayal that his private investigator had collected, images of stolen kisses in London cafes, secret meetings in hotel lobbies, and finally, the damning proof. Adrian accepting a ring from James Hartford, CEO of Hartford Global, while still wearing Israel's wedding band. His phone buzzed with a text from his younger sister, Rain. "Big brother, please tell me you're not still at the office. You need to rest." Israel's lips curved in a bitter smile. Rest? Sleep had become a distant memory since the day 3 weeks ago when he'd discovered the truth. That morning had started normally enough, a routine video call with Adrienne, who was supposedly in London for a temporary consulting position. She'd looked flushed, happy even, as she spoke about her projects. It wasn't until later that day, when the first report from his PI landed in his inbox, that he understood the source of her joy. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was professional too. Hartford Global had been trying to acquire Chosen Industries for years. What better way to gain inside information than to seduce the CEO's wife? The thought made bile rise in his throat. Walking to the wet bar in the corner of his office, Israel poured himself 2 fingers of scotch. Aged 30 years, a gift from his father on the day he'd taken over as CEO. "Never let them see you bleed, son," his father had said. The old man had been right about so many things. The liquor burned pleasantly as he swallowed, his reflection in the bar's mirror catching his eye. Dark circles shadowed his steel-grey eyes, and his black hair, usually perfectly styled, showed signs of running his fingers through it too often. He looked every bit the wounded man he was, but he'd be damned if he'd let anyone else see it. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called out, straightening his shoulders. Marcus Chen, his head of legal, stepped in with another stack of papers. "The final settlement documents are ready for your review, sir." Israel nodded, gesturing for Marcus to place them on the desk. "Any surprises?" No, sir. As expected, Mrs. Chosen, Ms. Reynolds now, has agreed to all terms, including the non-disclosure agreement. She's waiving any claim to company shares or property. Of course she was. Hartford Global had made sure she wouldn't need anything from her soon-to-be ex-husband. The thought made his hand tighten around the crystal tumbler. Sir, Marcus hesitated. There's something else. The board is concerned about the succession issue. Ah, there it was. The real reason for today's board meeting. Chosen Industries bylaws, written by his traditionalist father, required the CEO to be married with an heir to maintain control. It had never been an issue before. He and Adrian had been young, with plenty of time for children. Now, at 35, with the divorce looming and his position potentially at risk, it had become a critical problem. They're worried about stability, Marcus continued, especially with Hartford Global circling. The shareholders need reassurance. Israel set down his glass with deliberate care. Tell me, Marcus, how does one find a wife who won't sell company secrets to the highest bidder? The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. There are arrangements that can be made. Contract marriages aren't uncommon in our circles. A contract marriage. The idea should have repulsed him, yet something about its cold, businesslike nature appealed to his wounded heart. No emotions, no chances for betrayal, just clear terms and mutual benefit. Draw up a preliminary contract, he found himself saying. Something ironclad. I want clauses for everything. Infidelity, corporate espionage, social media behavior. Leave nothing to chance. Marcus nodded, making notes on his tablet. Any specific requirements for potential candidates? Israel turned back to the window, watching as the city lights began to twinkle in the gathering dusk. Someone intelligent enough to understand what they're signing up for. Professional background, preferably in finance or law. No existing connections to any competing corporations. He paused, then added, and absolutely no one from the social circles Adrian frequented. I'll have HR start discreet screenings, Marcus replied. The board meeting? Yes, I know. I'm coming. Israel gathered the divorce papers, slipping them into his desk drawer. He couldn't afford to show weakness, not now when sharks were circling his company, waiting for any sign of vulnerability. As he followed Marcus toward the conference room, his mind was already shifting gears, strategizing. He'd been a fool once, believing in love and happy endings. It wouldn't happen again. This time, marriage would be what it should have been all along. A business transaction, nothing more. The conference room doors loomed ahead and Israel straightened his tie, his expression settling into the masked perfection that had earned him the nickname Ice King in business circles. Let them whisper about his failed marriage. Let them wonder about succession plans. He would show them all that Israel Chosen didn't break. He rebuilt, stronger than before. Little did he know that fate had other plans, and somewhere in the city, a young financial analyst named Kaylee Iden was about to receive a phone call that would change both their lives forever. Chapter 2. The Proposition. Kaylee Iden's fingers flew across her keyboard, her green eyes fixed on the multiple spreadsheets displayed across her monitors. The financial analysis department at Sterling and Associates was quiet at 7:30 p.m., most of her colleagues having left hours ago. But for Kaylee, late nights were a necessity, not just to prove herself as the youngest financial analyst in the firm's history, but because every extra hour meant another dollar toward her mother's mounting medical bills. A notification popped up on her screen. Hospital payment due. Her shoulders tensed as she quickly minimized it. 3 more years of her mother's experimental treatment, and the insurance only covered 60%. Sometimes it felt like drowning in slow motion. Still here, Wonder Girl. Kaylee looked up to find Jasmine, the office manager, leaning against her cubicle wall. Despite the late hour, Jasmine's makeup remained perfect, her designer outfit unwrinkled. Everything Kaylee, in her modest navy blazer and sensible shoes, was not. "Just finishing the Morrison Group analysis," Kaylee replied, pushing her glasses up her nose. They were her one vanity. Designer frames that brought out the subtle gold flecks in her eyes, a splurge from her first bonus. Jasmine's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "You might want to hold off on that one. Word is, Drake Morrison's more interested in a hostile takeover of Chosen Industries than any legitimate business." Kaylee's interest piqued. She'd been following Chosen Industries' stock movements for months, noting patterns that suggested internal turmoil. The recent news of CEO Israel Chosen's impending divorce had sent ripples through the financial world, though the details remained surprisingly private. "Speaking of Chosen," Jasmine continued, her voice dropping conspiratorially, "HR's been getting some interesting calls about you." "Me?" Kaylee blinked, her hand freezing over her mouse. "Why would anyone be calling about me?" Jasmine shrugged, but her eyes gleamed with curiosity. "No idea, but Marcus Chen himself was asking about your background check results. Marcus Chen, head of legal at Chosen Industries." Kaylee's analytical mind immediately began connecting dots, though the picture made no sense. Why would one of the most powerful corporations in the country be interested in a junior financial analyst? Her phone buzzed, displaying an unknown number. Normally, she'd let it go to voicemail, but something made her answer. "Miss Iden," a crisp, professional voice inquired. "This is Marcus Chen from Chosen Industries. I apologize for calling so late, but we have a rather urgent matter to discuss. Would you be available for a meeting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.? Kaylee's heart raced, but her voice remained steady. "May I ask what this is regarding?" "I'm afraid I can only discuss the details in person. However, I can assure you it's a legitimate business proposition that could be life-changing." Life-changing. The hospital bill notification flickered in her peripheral vision. "I'll need to check with my supervisor." "That's been arranged," Marcus interrupted smoothly. "A car will pick you up at 8:30 a.m. After ending the call, Kaylee sat back, mind whirling. Jasmine had disappeared, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the gentle hum of computers. The next morning found her in the back of a sleek black Mercedes, watching the city transform from her modest neighborhood to the gleaming financial district. The Chosen Industries building rose like a crystal spear against the morning sky, its 100 stories of glass and steel reflecting the sunrise. Security cleared her with surprising efficiency, and before she knew it, she was being led to a private elevator. Her reflection in its mirrored walls showed a young woman trying very hard to look composed. Honey blonde hair neatly twisted into a professional bun, minimal makeup emphasizing her natural features, and a dark grey suit that was the most expensive piece in her wardrobe. The elevator opened directly into a reception area where Marcus Chen waited, his reputation for efficiency evident in every crisp movement as he greeted her. "Miss Iden, thank you for coming. Please, follow me." They entered a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows, but Kaylee barely noticed the spectacular view. Her attention was immediately drawn to the man standing at the head of the table. Israel Chosen commanded attention like gravity commanded mass. It was simply a law of nature. Tall and impeccably dressed in a custom suit that emphasized his athletic build, he radiated power and control. But it was his eyes that caught her, steel gray and intensely focused, yet holding shadows she recognized from her own mirror, the eyes of someone carrying a heavy burden. "Miss Iden," his voice was deep, with a hint of roughness that suggested lack of sleep. "Please, sit." She took the offered chair, hyper-aware of his presence as he remained standing, studying her with an unreadable expression. Your analysis of the Morrison Group's financial strategies, he began without preamble, particularly your notes on their pattern of hostile takeovers through personal leverage. It's impressive work. Kaylee's mind raced. That analysis was still in progress, not yet submitted to her supervisors. How did you... We have our ways, he cut in smoothly. More importantly, it demonstrates exactly the kind of insight we need. Tell me, Miss Iden, what do you know about contract marriages? The question was so unexpected that for a moment, Kaylee thought she'd misheard. I'm sorry. Marcus slid a document across the table. We're offering you a business proposition, a marriage contract, 2 years minimum, with very specific terms and considerable compensation. Kaylee's hands trembled slightly as she opened the folder. The numbers on the first page made her breath catch, enough to cover her mother's treatment 10 times over. Why me? She managed to ask, proud that her voice remained steady. Israel finally sat, his movements graceful despite his obvious fatigue. Because you're brilliant but unknown, because your background check shows a history of absolute discretion and loyalty, and because you have a pressing need that we can help with, while you help us maintain stability during a crucial period. Her mother's face flashed in her mind, pale and brave in her hospital bed, trying to hide her pain. The medical bills, she whispered, all covered, plus a substantial trust for future care, Marcus confirmed, along with other benefits detailed in Section 3. Kaylee forced herself to think analytically, to approach this like any other business proposition. And what exactly would be required of me? Public appearances as my wife, residence in my penthouse, participation in social events relevant to the company, and, Israel paused, his expression hardening slightly, an heir within the 2-year period. An heir. The clinical term couldn't disguise what that meant. Kaylee felt heat rise in her cheeks, but kept her expression professional. The contract includes strict confidentiality clauses, Marcus added, and significant penalties for any breach of terms, particularly regarding business intelligence or, he glanced at Israel, personal matters. Kaylee understood the unspoken reference to his ex-wife's betrayal. The business world was rife with rumors, though the details had been kept surprisingly quiet. How long do I have to decide? She asked, her mind already calculating probabilities and consequences. Until 5 p.m. today, Israel replied, standing. I have a board meeting at 6, where I need to present either a signed contract or a different solution. He moved to leave, then paused beside her chair. This close, she could smell his expensive cologne and see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw. Miss Iden. His voice was lower, almost gentle. I know this is overwhelming, but sometimes the most life-changing opportunities come disguised as impossible choices. After they left, Kaylee sat alone in the conference room, staring at the contract before her. The sun had fully risen now, bathing the city in morning light. Somewhere in that sprawl of buildings was her mother's hospital, where monthly bills arrived with the regularity of terminal illness. Somewhere was her tiny apartment with its second-hand furniture and careful budgets. And here, in this room high above it all, was a chance to change everything at the cost of only 2 years of her life and her heart's independence. Little did she know, as she reached for the pen with trembling fingers, that she was about to embark on a journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about business, loyalty, and love. And that the man who had just left the room, carrying his own carefully guarded wounds, would become far more than just a name on a contract. Chapter 3. Terms and Conditions. The leather chair in Marcus Chen's office creaked softly as Kaylee shifted, her eyes moving methodically through the prenuptial agreement. The wall clock showed 4:30 p.m., 30 minutes before Azael's deadline. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, storm clouds gathered, matching the tension in the room. Section 7.3, she murmured, her financial analyst's mind cataloguing every detail. The infidelity clause seems severe. Marcus nodded, his expression carefully neutral. Total forfeiture of assets by the guilty party, plus a penalty of $50 million. He paused, then added quietly, Mr. Chosen was quite insistent on this point. Of course he was. Kaylee had spent her lunch break researching Adrienne Reynolds Chosen, now Adrienne Hartford. The woman's social media told a story of calculated ambition, each post, each career move, seemingly orchestrated to climb higher in the business world. Her marriage to James Hartford had been announced with stunning speed after the divorce filing. The social media restrictions? Kaylee asked, turning a page. All posts must be approved by the PR department. We'll provide guidelines for appropriate content and frequency. Marcus gestured to a thick addendum. You'll have a personal stylist, social secretary, and security detail. Everything from your wardrobe to your daily schedule will be coordinated to maintain the image of a proper Chosen Industries executive spouse. The door opened, and Isael entered, his presence immediately filling the room. He'd shed his suit jacket, his crisp white shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. Despite his casual appearance, power radiated from every movement as he took the seat beside her. "How are we progressing?" he asked, his voice carrying that hint of roughness she was beginning to recognize as fatigue. "Miss Iden has some concerns about Section 12, Marcus replied. "Ah, yes, Section 12, the air requirement." Kaylee felt heat rise in her cheeks, but forced herself to meet Isael's gaze. "The timeline seems aggressive." "The board requires an heir within 2 years, Isael stated flatly. "However, I'm willing to add a clause regarding medical privacy and personal comfort levels within that time frame." Something flickered in his eyes. Was it consideration? Before she could analyze it, his phone buzzed. The message made his jaw tighten. "Drake Morrison just bought another 2% of our shares through a shell company," he informed Marcus. "He's getting bolder." "All the more reason to finalize this today," Marcus responded, sliding another document forward. "The marriage license is ready. Once signed, we can have the ceremony tomorrow morning." Tomorrow? Kaylee's heart raced. Everything was moving so fast. She looked down at Section 15.4, divorce terms after contract completion. The settlement was beyond generous, ensuring she and her mother would never want for anything again. "I have a counter-proposal," she said suddenly, surprising herself as much as them. Both men turned to her, Isael's eyebrows rising slightly. "Regarding," he prompted, "Section 9.2, my role in the company." Kaylee sat straighter, channeling every ounce of professional confidence she'd developed. "You're not just getting a wife, Mr. Chosen. You're getting a financial analyst with specific insights into Drake Morrison's tactics. I want to be more than a figurehead." A strange expression crossed Isael's face, something almost like respect. "What exactly are you proposing?" "I want access to the company's financial data, not just surface level, but deep analysis permissions. If Morrison is planning something, it'll show in the numbers first." She met his gaze steadily. "You need someone who can spot patterns others might miss, someone whose loyalty is guaranteed by both contract and personal interest." Marcus began to object, but Isael held up a hand, studying her with those intense grey eyes. "And in return, I'll sign everything else as is, including the 2-year timeline." Kaylee's heart pounded, but her voice remained firm. "But I want to actually help protect your company, not just serve as window dressing." Thunder rumbled outside as silence filled the office. Isael stood, moving to the window to watch the approaching storm. His reflection in the glass showed an expression she couldn't quite read. "Add it," he finally said. "Full analysis permissions. Direct report to me. Weekly briefings. He turned back to her. But understand this. If you sign these papers, your loyalty belongs to me and this company completely. There's no middle ground. The intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. I understand. Marcus began modifying the documents as Isael's phone buzzed again. This time, his sister Rain's name appeared on the screen. Shouldn't you be resting? He answered, his tone softening slightly. A pause. Yes, the contract marriage is proceeding. Another pause. No, you can't meet her yet. The press conference is scheduled for... He moved to the corner of the office, continuing his conversation in low tones. Kaylee used the moment to study him. Despite his commanding presence, signs of strain showed in the tension of his shoulders, the slight shadows under his eyes. This wasn't just business for him. It was personal. Morrison's attempted takeover, coming so soon after Adrian's betrayal, threatened everything he'd built. Miss Iden, Marcus's voice drew her attention back. The modifications are complete. Shall we proceed? The next hour passed in a blur of signatures and initials. Each page felt heavier than the last as Kaylee signed away her independence. Yet somehow, watching Isael's strong hand move confidently across each document, she felt less like she was giving up her freedom and more like she was stepping into something significant. The final signature was witnessed by Marcus and his assistant just as the storm broke outside. Rain lashed against the windows as Isael stood, buttoning his suit jacket. The car will take you home to pack essentials, he informed her, all business again. The rest of your belongings will be moved tomorrow. The ceremony is at 9 a.m. in the penthouse. Small, private, just legal witnesses. And after? Kaylee asked, trying to process that in less than 24 hours. She'd be Mrs. Chosen. After, we have a press conference announcing our marriage and your appointment as special financial analyst. His lips curved slightly. You did want to be more than window dressing, correct? Before she could respond, his phone buzzed yet again. This time, his expression darkened as he read the message. Morrison's called an emergency shareholders meeting for next week, he told Marcus. He's making his move sooner than expected. The marriage announcement should stabilize things, Marcus assured him. Speaking of which, the ring... Isael removed a small velvet box from his pocket, and Kaylee's heart skipped despite herself. The diamond was stunning, elegant rather than flashy, with Art Deco-inspired details that somehow perfectly matched her aesthetic. The family ring stays in the vault, he said quietly, as he slid it onto her finger. His touch was unexpectedly gentle, his hands warm against her cold fingers. This one suited you better. The fact that he'd chosen it specifically for her, that he'd noticed her style preferences even during their brief interactions, caused an unfamiliar warmth in her chest. The ring fit perfectly. Thank you, she whispered, and something shifted in his expression before he quickly masked it. The car is waiting, he said, stepping back. Marcus will send you the schedule for tomorrow. Try to rest. The media circus begins at noon. As Kaylee gathered her things, a flash of lightning illuminated the office. In that brief, brilliant moment, she caught Isael watching her with an unguarded expression, something like curiosity mixed with another emotion she couldn't quite name. Then thunder crashed, and the moment passed. He was back to being the untouchable CEO, already focused on his phone, probably handling the latest Morrison crisis. In the elevator, Kaylee studied her reflection. Same person, same clothes, same glasses, but now with a ring that cost more than her annual salary and a contract that would change her life forever. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind from their phone conversation an hour ago. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is take a leap of faith. The elevator doors opened to reveal her new security detail, two discreet, but obviously capable men who would now be permanent fixtures in her life. As they escorted her to the waiting car, rain soaking the city streets, Kaylee couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just signed up for far more than a simple business arrangement. Little did she know that upstairs, Israel stood at his window watching her car pull away, his expression thoughtful as he absently twisted his own wedding ring, a ring that would be replaced tomorrow with one that symbolized a very different kind of marriage. A marriage of convenience that would soon become anything but convenient as hearts, carefully guarded behind contract clauses and business terminology, began their own unexpected negotiations. Chapter 4. Unexpected Discovery. The setting sun painted golden streaks across the penthouse's marble floors as Kaylee stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city transform into a constellation of twinkling lights. Her wedding dress, a sophisticated Vera Wang creation chosen by the PR team for its appropriate balance of elegance and modesty, rustled softly with each nervous breath. The day had been a whirlwind of calculated precision. The morning ceremony, attended only by Marcus Chen and the necessary legal witnesses, had taken exactly 23 minutes. The press conference that followed was a masterclass in corporate communications, with Israel presenting their marriage as a natural progression of mutual respect and shared values. Now, 12 hours later, she was Mrs. Kaylee Chosen, and social media was ablaze with speculation about the Ice King's surprise wedding. Mrs. Chosen. She turned to find Marina, the housekeeper, standing discreetly by the master suite's entrance. "Your evening preparations are complete, and Mr. Chosen will be arriving shortly. He just finished his conference call with the Tokyo office." Even their wedding night was scheduled like a business meeting. Kaylee's hands trembled slightly as she smoothed down her silk nightgown. Another carefully selected item, this one from La Perla. The fabric probably cost more than her old apartment's monthly rent. "Thank you, Marina," she managed, proud that her voice remained steady. The older woman's eyes softened with something like sympathy before she quietly withdrew. Alone again, Kaylee moved to the ensuite bathroom, its marble and glass luxury still foreign after just one day. Her reflection showed a woman transformed, honey blonde hair falling in soft waves, courtesy of the stylist, subtle makeup enhancing her green eyes, carefully maintained from the day's events, and a body veiled in ivory silk that made her look more sophisticated than she felt. The sound of the bedroom door opening made her heart leap into her throat. She heard Israel's footsteps, the subtle shift of fabric as he removed his suit jacket, the quiet clink of his cufflinks being placed on the dresser. Kaylee. His deep voice carried through the bathroom door. He'd started using her first name during the press conference, the syllables rolling off his tongue with practiced ease. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door. Israel stood by the window where she'd been earlier, his tall frame silhouetted against the city lights. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, revealing those strong forearms that had distracted her during contract signatures. The jacket of his Tom Ford wedding suit was draped over a chair, and she noticed he'd already removed his shoes, making him seem somehow more approachable. "The press coverage was favorable," he said, turning to face her. His words were businesslike, but his eyes darkened as they took in her appearance. The stock jumped 6 points after the announcement. "I saw," she replied, grateful for the familiar territory of financial discussion. Morrison's shell companies stopped purchasing shares around 2 p.m. Israel moved to the wet bar, pouring 2 glasses of champagne. "Celebrating our successful merger." The hint of irony in his voice made her lips curve despite her nervousness. Something like that. She accepted the glass, their fingers brushing briefly. The contact sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "You handled the press conference well," he observed, studying her over the rim of his glass. "Even that question about Adrienne." "Yes, the reporter who tried to provoke a reaction by asking how it felt to follow such a notorious predecessor. Kaylee had smiled and replied that she preferred to focus on the future rather than the past, earning an approving nod from Marcus. The PR team's briefing was thorough, she said, taking a sip of champagne to steady her nerves. The vintage was excellent, probably worth more than her old car. "They didn't tell you to look at me that way when you answered," Israel replied, his voice dropping slightly. "That was all you." Heat rose in her cheeks as she remembered the moment, how she'd instinctively turned to him, her response genuine despite the orchestrated nature of their marriage. Something had passed between them then, something that made the reporters lean forward in their seats. He set down his glass and moved closer, his height making her tip her head back to maintain eye contact. "We should discuss expectations for tonight." Her heart raced at his proximity. Up close, she could see the faint shadows under his eyes, smell his expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. The contract specified an heir within 2 years, he interrupted softly. "It didn't specify rushing things on our wedding night just to meet social expectations." Surprise made her blink. "You don't want—" "What I want," his hand came up to cup her cheek, the touch surprisingly gentle, "is to understand why you're trembling." The tenderness in his gesture undid her careful composure. "I've never—" She swallowed hard. "This would be my first—" Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something fierce and protective that made her breath catch. His thumb stroked her cheekbone as he processed this revelation. "Why didn't you tell me?" "It wasn't relevant to the contract terms," she whispered, unconsciously leaning into his touch, "and I didn't want you to think I was too inexperienced for the position." A sound somewhere between a laugh and a groan escaped him. "The position of my wife." His other hand came to rest on her waist, warm through the silk. "Kaylee, this changes things." "It doesn't have to," she insisted, even as her body betrayed her by pressing closer to his warmth. "I understand what's required." "Stop." His voice was rough now, his eyes intense as they searched hers. "You're not a business requirement, not in this. This part of our arrangement happens on your terms, when you're ready." The tenderness beneath his words made tears prick at her eyes. She'd expected cold efficiency, maybe even indifference. Instead, this powerful man who'd married her for business was treating her first time as something precious. "The board," she began, but he shook his head. "The board isn't in this room," he murmured, his thumb brushing away a tear that escaped. "Tonight, we sleep, just sleep, and tomorrow we begin learning each other properly." As if to demonstrate, he lowered his head slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his lips brushed hers, the barest whisper of a kiss, sweet and undemanding. The gentleness undid her. Before she could stop herself, her hands came up to grip his shirt, pressing closer as the kiss deepened. He groaned softly, his arms tightening around her, but maintained careful control, even as she felt the rapid beat of his heart against her palms. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, his eyes had darkened to storm cloud grey. "You're going to test my self-control, aren't you?" The roughness in his voice sent shivers through her. "I thought you didn't believe in tests anymore," she replied softly, referencing his comment during the press conference about their relationship being built on trust rather than trials. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, followed by what might have been admiration. "You're dangerous," he murmured, pressing his forehead to hers. "Using my own words against me already." They stood like that for a moment, sharing breath before he slowly released her. "Go change into something comfortable," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "I'll do the same, and then we'll talk. Really talk, without contracts or cameras or expectations. In the bathroom, Kaylee found that Marina had laid out silk pajamas alongside the lingerie. As she changed, she heard Israel moving around the bedroom, the domestic sounds oddly comforting. When she emerged, he'd changed into black lounge pants and a soft grey t-shirt that made him look younger, more approachable. He'd turned down the bed and was sitting against the headboard, legs stretched out on top of the covers. Patting the space beside him, he said simply, "Come here." Kaylee hesitated only a moment before joining him, careful to leave space between them. To her surprise, he immediately pulled her closer, arranging her against his side with her head on his shoulder. "Better," he murmured. "Now tell me about your mother's treatment, the real story, not the sanitized version in your background check." The unexpected question, asked with genuine interest, broke down her remaining walls. Soon she found herself telling him everything, the experimental procedures, the hopeful days and painful setbacks, the hours spent researching medical journals for new options. He listened intently, asking occasional questions that showed he was truly processing her words. His hand absently stroked her hair, the gesture seemingly unconscious but deeply soothing. "The contract's medical coverage will give her access to any treatment she needs," he said when she finished. "I'll have Marcus expedite the paperwork tomorrow." Tears pricked her eyes again at his matter-of-fact kindness. "Thank you." "Don't thank me for basic decency," he replied, his voice rumbling under her ear. "Now, your turn to ask me something. Anything you want to know about your new husband?" She thought for a moment. "Why did you really give me access to the company's financial data? The truth, not the business reason." His chest rose and fell with a deep breath. "Because when you proposed it, you looked alive in a way you hadn't during all the contract discussions. Like you weren't just accepting a role, but claiming your place." His fingers continued their gentle stroking of her hair. "It reminded me of myself at your age, back when business was about more than just power and protection." The vulnerability in his admission made her heart ache. Acting on instinct, she turned her face into his neck, pressing a soft kiss to his pulse point. His breath caught, his arm tightening around her. "Careful," he warned, though his voice held more amusement than censure. "I'm trying to be a gentleman here." "You're succeeding," she assured him, settling back against his shoulder. "Tell me about Tokyo." The call seemed intense. They talked for hours, sharing stories and observations, gradually relaxing into each other's space. Kaylee learned about his sister Rain's environmental activism, his father's traditional values that shaped the company culture, his passion for restoration of classic cars. In turn, she told him about her college years studying advanced economics, her dream of starting a foundation for families facing medical debt, her secret love of trashy romance novels. Somewhere around midnight, exhaustion began to overtake them. Israel insisted she take the ensuite bathroom first, and when she returned, he'd arranged the pillows and turned down the covers properly. "Sleep," he said softly, pressing a kiss to her forehead before heading to the bathroom himself. "Tomorrow starts early." Lying in the massive bed, surrounded by luxury but comforted most by the sound of running water and quiet movement from the bathroom, Kaylee reflected on the unexpected turn her wedding night had taken. She'd expected business-like efficiency at best, cold duty at worst. Instead, she'd discovered layers to Israel Chosen that made her heart flutter in a decidedly non-contractual way. When he returned and slid under the covers beside her, she was already half asleep. His arm curved around her waist, drawing her back against his chest in a position that felt surprisingly natural. "Rest," he murmured against her hair. "I've got you." As she drifted off, Kaylee realized that somewhere between the contract signing and this moment, something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't just about business anymore, wasn't just about heirs and company stability. In treating her virginity as precious rather than inconvenient, in showing genuine interest in her life and dreams, Israel had revealed a capacity for tenderness that all his careful walls couldn't quite hide. And that, she realized as sleep claimed her, might be the most dangerous discovery of all. In the darkness, Israel lay awake a while longer, marveling at how right she felt in his arms. He'd planned this marriage as a business arrangement, a shield against vulnerability. Instead, he'd found himself enchanted by a woman whose strength was matched by a sweetness that made his protective instincts surge. "What are you doing to me?" he whispered to her sleeping form, allowing himself one more gentle kiss to her hair before closing his eyes. Neither of them knew it yet, but this night would mark the beginning of a transformation, from a marriage of convenience to something far more powerful and profound than either had dared to imagine. Chapter 5. Growing Tensions. 3 weeks into their marriage, Kaylee was burning midnight oil in her office, surrounded by financial reports and market analyses. The blue light from her monitors cast shadows across walls covered in complex flowcharts tracking Morrison's company movements. Something about his latest acquisitions pattern nagged at her analytical mind. Found something interesting. She jumped at Israel's voice, looking up to find him leaning against her doorframe. Even at this late hour, he looked impeccable in his tailored suit, though she noticed the slight loosening of his tie, a sign of his own long day. Maybe. She pulled up a series of transactions on her main screen. Look at Morrison's acquisition pattern. He's not just buying shares through shell companies anymore. He's systematically targeting our supply chain partners. Israel moved behind her chair, his presence warm and solid as he studied the data. The subtle scent of his cologne made her pulse quicken, but she forced herself to focus. Here, she pointed to a particular cluster of transactions. 3 pharmaceutical research companies, all acquired through different shell corporations, all with contracts to chosen industries. But the timing. What about it? His hand rested on the back of her chair, fingers just brushing her shoulder. They were all purchased 3 months before your divorce filing became public. She pulled up more data. And look at their research focus. Fertility treatments, reproductive medicine, genetic enhancement. Israel went very still behind her. "Show me the funding sources." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, bringing up complex financial webs. That's the interesting part. The money's being routed through Singapore, but if you trace it back, she highlighted a series of transactions. It all leads to one holding company, Phoenix Global Investments. I've never heard of them. You wouldn't have. They were incorporated exactly 1 day after. She hesitated. After what? After your first date with Adrian. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Israel straightened, moving to stare out her office window at the city lights. It wasn't chance, he said quietly. Meeting her at that gala, the whole relationship, was possibly orchestrated. Kaylee stood, torn between giving him space and offering comfort. But Israel, there's more. The pharmaceutical companies, they're all working on something called Project Phoenix. And the preliminary research, she swallowed hard. It involves fertility enhancement drugs. He turned back to her sharply. What kind of enhancement? The documents are heavily redacted, but I found references to multiple birth rates, success probability factors. She met his eyes. They were developing ways to guarantee twins or triplets. Understanding dawned in his expression, followed by something darker. To ensure an heir quickly, make any marriage harder to dissolve, and tie the chosen wife to the company permanently through children. Kaylee's analytical mind was racing ahead. But why go to such elaborate lengths, unless ... unless taking over chosen industries was only part of the plan. Isael moved back to her desk, studying the financial webs she'd mapped. These research facilities, the drug development, they're using my company's resources for something bigger. A notification popped up on Kaylee's screen, an email from an unknown sender. Her blood chilled as she read it. Clever analysis, Mrs. Chosen. But some secrets are better left buried. Ask your husband about Project Phoenix, or better yet, ask Adrienne, while you still can. Isael's hand gripped her shoulder as he read the threat. Before either could speak, her office window exploded inward, glass spraying across her desk. Isael yanked her down, covering her body with his, as a brick landed where she'd been sitting moments before. "Security!" His voice was sharp as he activated his phone's emergency protocol, but his hands were gentle as they checked her for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," she assured him, though her heart raced. The brick had a note attached. "Next time, won't miss." Marcus burst in with security teams, efficiently securing the area while Isael kept Kaylee close, his arm protective around her waist. "Sweep the building," he ordered. "I want every security feed from the last 24 hours analyzed, and get that glass cleaned up." He looked down at Kaylee. "You're moving your office next to mine. No arguments." She started to protest, but the fierce concern in his eyes stopped her. This wasn't just her CEO being protective. This was her husband, genuinely afraid for her safety. "Okay," she agreed softly, letting him pull her closer. Hours later, after security sweeps and police reports, they sat in Isael's penthouse office. Kaylee had changed into one of his spare shirts, the expensive fabric swimming on her frame, but somehow comforting. "We need to talk about what you found," Isael said finally, handing her a glass of wine. "All of it." She curled into the leather sofa, watching him pace. "You think Morrison's working with someone inside Chosen Industries?" "Has to be. The timing of those acquisitions, the information about the divorce." He ran a hand through his hair. "Someone high level, someone who would know about—" "Project Phoenix?" she suggested quietly. He stopped pacing, turning to look at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I never told anyone this, but before Adrienne left, she tried to convince me to invest in a pharmaceutical research project. Said it would revolutionize the fertility industry. Let me guess, the project name? Phoenix." He moved to sit beside her, close enough that she felt his warmth. "I refused. The protocol seemed questionable, the ethics murky. She was surprisingly angry about it." Kaylee's mind connected more dots. The shell companies, the research facilities, they needed your company's resources, your connections. When you wouldn't cooperate, they found another way in. His jaw clenched. "Through you." She set down her wine, turning to face him fully. "Isael, was our marriage part of their plan too?" His eyes snapped to hers, something fierce and protective flaring in them. "Number finding you, choosing you, that was all me. They might have pushed me toward a contract marriage, but you—" His hand came up to cup her cheek. "You were never part of their scheme." The tenderness in his touch made her heart race. "How can you be sure?" "Because—" His thumb stroked her cheekbone in a way that made her shiver. "You're the one variable they couldn't control. The analyst too brilliant to manipulate, the woman too genuine to corrupt." His voice roughened. "The wife who made me feel something real for the first time in years." She leaned into his touch, unable to help herself. "What do we do now?" "We fight back." His other hand found her waist, pulling her closer. "Together, no more playing defense, no more reacting to their moves. We find everything they're hiding, expose every connection, protect what's ours." "What's ours?" she whispered, hyper-aware of his proximity. Instead of answering, he kissed her. Unlike their previous careful kisses, this one was deep and passionate, full of the fear and protectiveness and growing feelings neither had fully acknowledged. When they parted, both breathing heavily, he rested his forehead against hers. "Everything," he murmured. "The company, our marriage, this thing growing between us that terrifies and thrills me in equal measure." She curled her fingers into his shirt, anchoring herself. "I thought this was just business for you." "It was supposed to be." His laugh was slightly unsteady. "Then you walked into my office with your brilliant mind and pure heart, and suddenly business was the last thing on my mind." A notification on her tablet interrupted the moment, more data about Project Phoenix. But this time, as they studied the information together, something had shifted. His arm stayed around her waist, her head resting naturally against his shoulder as they worked. They were no longer just CEO and analyst, or even contract husband and wife. They were partners in every sense, facing the growing threats together. And somewhere across the city, in a carefully hidden research facility, Drake Morrison received an update about their discoveries. His cold smile held no warmth as he typed a message to his true partner, the woman who had orchestrated everything from the beginning. "They're getting closer, Adrienne. Time to move to phase 2. The response came quickly. "Remember the plan. The Ice King's heart has finally thawed. Now we can truly destroy him." But what neither of them knew was that love, real love, couldn't be used as a weapon. It could only make its bearers stronger. And in the penthouse office, surrounded by evidence of conspiracy but wrapped in each other's arms, Isael and Kaylee were discovering just how strong they could be together. Chapter 6. Shadows of the Past. The headlines splashed across every major financial news outlet. Exposed, the affairs that broke Chosen Industries' power couple. Beneath it, intimate photos of Adrian with James Hartford, dated months before the divorce filing, each one more damning than the last. Kaylee stood in Isael's office, watching his reaction as he scrolled through the articles on his tablet. After 6 weeks of marriage, she'd learned to read the subtle signs of his distress, the tightness around his eyes, the almost imperceptible clench of his jaw. "They're trying to destabilize you before the shareholders' meeting," she said softly, moving to perch on his desk beside him. "The timing's too perfect." Isael set down the tablet, rubbing his temples. "Morrison's work, no doubt, though how he got these photos—" "Actually," Kaylee interrupted, pulling up her own research on her laptop, "I don't think it was Morrison. Look at the metadata from the published images." He leaned closer, his shoulder pressing against her hip as he studied the screen. The casual intimacy of the contact still made her heart skip, even after weeks of growing closer. "The timestamps," he murmured, focus sharpening. "These were taken by—" "Your own security team," she confirmed. "The ones you hired to investigate Adrian. The photos were stored in Chosen Industries' secure servers." His expression darkened. "Another leak from inside." But not just any leak. Kaylee pulled up more data. The access logs show these files were downloaded using executive-level credentials. Someone on the board is working with Morrison. Isael stood abruptly, pacing to the window. The setting sun cast his profile in sharp relief as he stared out at the city. "I trusted them. All of them." The raw pain in his voice made Kaylee's chest ache. Without hesitation, she followed him, slipping her arms around his waist from behind. Their position of comfort now, established that morning weeks ago when she'd first discovered Morrison's early knowledge of the divorce. "You trusted them because you're honorable," she said softly against his back. "Their betrayal reflects on them. Not you." His hands covered hers, squeezing gently. "When did you get so wise?" "Around the same time you started letting me see behind your walls." He turned in her embrace, one hand coming up to cup her cheek. His eyes searched hers, filled with an intensity that made her breath catch. I'm beginning to think the contract was the worst mistake of my life. Her heart stuttered. What? It's limiting us, he explained, thumb stroking her cheekbone, making us second-guess every feeling, every touch, wondering what's real and what's obligation. And what feels real right now, she whispered, hardly daring to breathe. Instead of answering, he lowered his head and kissed her. Unlike their previous kisses, sweet, careful things, mindful of her inexperience, this one was deep and demanding. His arm banded around her waist, pulling her flush against him as his other hand tangled in her hair. Kaylee melted into him, her hands clutching his shirt as she opened to his kiss. All the attraction and tenderness that had been building between them crystallized into this moment of passion and truth. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, he rested his forehead against hers. "That," he said roughly, "that feels real." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed with an urgent message. The spell broke as reality crashed back in. Moving to check it, his expression hardened. "Morrison's called an emergency press conference," he reported. "In an hour." Kaylee was already moving to her laptop. "He'll try to use the photos to challenge your leadership, paint you as emotionally compromised." "Let him try." Isael's voice held a dangerous edge. "I'm done being reactive. It's time to hit back." She looked up, catching the gleam in his eye. "You have a plan." "We have a plan." He moved back to her, tilting her chin up. "You found the connection between Morrison and Project Phoenix. Now we use it." The shareholders' meeting, she realized. If we can prove Morrison knew about Adrian's betrayal in advance, we prove conspiracy. He nodded. "But we need absolute certainty. One mistake and we'll look paranoid, playing into their hands." Kaylee bit her lip, thinking. The Singapore shell companies. If I can trace the money back to Hartford Global ... Do it. He pressed a swift, hard kiss to her lips. "I'll handle Morrison's press conference. You follow the money." She caught his arm as he turned to leave. "Isael, the photos. Are you okay?" Something softened in his expression. "I thought seeing them would hurt more," he admitted. "But looking at Adrian with Hartford, all I feel is gratitude." "Gratitude?" His hand cupped her cheek again, eyes intense. "Her betrayal led me to you." The simple sincerity of his words made her heart swell. This time she initiated the kiss, rising on tiptoes to press her lips to his. He responded immediately, gathering her close for a moment that felt like a promise. The phone buzzed again. Marcus, with press conference preparations. They separated reluctantly, though Isael's hand lingered on her waist. "Be careful," he murmured. "Morrison's desperate now. That makes him dangerous." "I will, if you will," she countered, straightening his tie in their familiar gesture. His smile held a predatory edge. "Oh, I'm counting on him underestimating me, just like he underestimated my wife." The pride in his voice made her stand straighter. As he left to prepare for the press conference, Kaylee turned back to her laptop with renewed determination. She'd earn that pride, protect this man who was becoming far more than just her contract husband. Hours later, she was deep in financial records when she found it, the smoking gun that proved Morrison's connection to Hartford Global. But it was the next document that made her blood run cold. Project Phoenix wasn't just a corporate takeover, it was something much worse. Her hands shook as she dialed Isael's number. "I found it," she said when he answered. "But Isael, it's bigger than we thought. So much bigger." "Come to the penthouse," he replied, his voice tight with concern. "Don't stop for anything. I'm sending extra security." She gathered her evidence and headed for the elevator, mind racing. The pieces were falling into place, revealing a conspiracy that went beyond business rivalry into something potentially devastating. In the penthouse, she found Israel pacing, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up. The press conference had been brutal, Morrison throwing accusations, implying instability at chosen industries. But Israel had remained ice-cold, his responses calculated to project strength. The moment she entered, he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly for a long moment before stepping back to look at her findings. As she explained what she'd discovered, his expression grew increasingly grim. When she finished, silence filled the penthouse. "If you're right," he finally said, "we're not just fighting for the company anymore. We're fighting for lives." "I'm right." She pulled up more documents. "Look at the testing data, the signatures. The shell companies weren't just for buying shares. They were hiding research facilities." Israel studied the evidence, his analytical mind processing implications. "We'll need help. This is beyond corporate law now." "I know someone," she offered hesitantly. "From college. She works for the FBI's Financial Crimes Division." He nodded slowly. "Make the call, but Kaylee—" His hands framed her face. "This puts you in danger, real danger. Maybe you should—" "Don't." She covered his hands with hers. "Don't you dare suggest I leave. We're in this together." Something fierce and protective flashed in his eyes. Then he was kissing her again, hard and desperate, pouring all his fear and need into the contact. When they parted, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. "Together," he agreed roughly, "but promise me you'll be careful. I can't lose you, too." The vulnerability in his voice made tears prick her eyes. "You won't," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." They stood together at the penthouse windows, watching night fall over the city. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new dangers, but tonight they held each other, drawing strength from a connection that had grown far beyond their careful contract into something neither had expected, but both now cherished. Neither spoke of love yet. It was too soon, too tangled with duty and obligation. But as Israel's arms tightened around her, as Kaylee leaned back against his solid warmth, both felt it growing, inevitable as the sunrise. Chapter 7. Threats and Promises. The early morning silence of Chosen Industries' executive floor was shattered by the sound of breaking glass. Kaylee stumbled back from her desk, heart racing as she stared at the object that had just crashed through her office window, a brick wrapped in paper, the message clear. "Back off, or the next one won't miss." Her hand instinctively went to her stomach, where for the past few days she'd been harboring a secret suspicion. The morning sickness had started subtly, but as a woman who tracked everything meticulously, she knew her body's rhythms. She hadn't told Israel yet, wanting to be certain before adding this complication to their already tense situation. "Mrs. Chosen." Security burst through the door, weapons drawn. Behind them came Marcus Chen, his usually composed face tight with anger. "I'm fine," she assured them, though her voice shook slightly. "It didn't—" "Kaylee!" Israel's voice cut through the chaos as he pushed past everyone to reach her. His hands moved over her quickly, checking for injuries before cupping her face. "Are you hurt?" She leaned into his touch, drawing strength from his solid presence. "No, I'm okay. Just startled." His eyes went to the broken window, then to the brick still wrapped in its threatening message. The temperature in the room seemed to drop as his expression hardened into something dangerous. "Clear the floor," he ordered, not looking away from her. "Marcus, initiate lockdown protocols. No one in or out without direct authorization from me." As the room emptied, Israel pulled her closer, pressing his forehead to hers in their intimate gesture. "I should have had the windows replaced with bulletproof glass weeks ago." "You can't protect me from everything," she whispered, though her hands clutched his suit jacket. "Watch me." The fierce possessiveness in his voice made her shiver. Over the past 2 months, their relationship had evolved far beyond the contract's boundaries. What had started as careful attraction had blazed into something powerful and real, though neither had yet put it into words. "The FBI is close to proving Morrison's connection to Project Phoenix," she said, trying to focus on business. "This just shows we're getting to him." Izael's hand slid to her waist, holding her protectively. "He's escalating. First threats by text, now this. What's next? A car. Accident? A mugging gone wrong? Hey." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "Don't let them get in your head. That's what they want." His laugh was harsh. "They're already in my head. Every time you leave my sight, every morning I wake up and you're not there because you're already working." He broke off, jaw clenching. "Then let me move my office," she suggested softly. "Next to yours, like you wanted." He blinked in surprise. She'd been resistant to the idea before, wanting to maintain professional boundaries. But now, "What changed your mind?" "Everything," she wanted to say. "The way you look at me, the way you hold me at night, the possible life growing inside me that's half yours." Instead, she reached up to straighten his tie, their gesture intimate and grounding. "Maybe I just want to be closer to my husband." Something heated flashed in his eyes. Before she could process it, he was kissing her, deep and possessive. She melted into him, arms winding around his neck as he pulled her flush against him. When they parted, both breathing heavily, he kept her close. "Move in today. I'll have IT set up your systems immediately." She nodded, then swayed slightly as a wave of dizziness hit her. His arms tightened instantly. "Kaylee?" The concern in his voice made her heart ache. "What's wrong?" She should tell him. The words were on the tip of her tongue. But first, "I need to show you something," she said instead, "about Project Phoenix. I was working on it when—" She gestured to the broken window. His expression darkened again at the reminder of the threat. But he followed her to her computer. As she pulled up the documents, she felt him go still behind her. "These shipping manifests," he said slowly. "The chemical compounds." "They're not just planning a hostile takeover," she confirmed. "They're manufacturing something illegal, something dangerous. The research facilities we trace through the shell companies, they're not development labs, they're production facilities." Izael's hands gripped the back of her chair. "If this gets out, it would destroy Hartford Global," she finished, "and everyone connected to them, including Adrian." His voice was grim. "No wonder they're desperate to stop us." Another wave of dizziness washed over her, stronger this time. She gripped the desk, trying to hide it, but Izael noticed immediately. "That's it," he said firmly. "You're seeing the doctor, now." "I'm fine," she protested. "We need to focus on—" "You're not fine." His voice gentled as he turned her chair to face him. "You've been pale for days, barely eating. Don't think I haven't noticed." The concern in his eyes undid her. "Izael." "Please," he said softly, "let me take care of you." Those words, from this powerful man who trusted so rarely, broke down her last resistance. "Okay," she whispered, "but I think I know what's wrong." His expression sharpened. "Tell me." Instead of speaking, she took his hand and placed it low on her stomach. For a moment he looked confused. Then understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something she'd never seen before, raw, unguarded joy. "You're sure?" His voice was rough with emotion. "Pretty sure," she admitted. "I wanted to confirm before telling you, with everything else happening." He cut her off with a kiss, this one achingly tender. When he pulled back, his hand still rested protectively over her stomach. "Everything else just became secondary," he said firmly. "Your safety, your health, our—" He swallowed hard. "Our baby. That's all that matters now. The company, Can wait an hour while I take my wife to the doctor. His tone brooked no argument. Marcus can handle the crisis response. Right now, this is more important. As if to emphasize his point, he lifted her into his arms, ignoring her startled squeak. Isael, I can walk. Humor me, he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. I just found out I'm going to be a father. I'm allowed to be overprotective. In the car, with security following closely, Kaylee curled into his side. His hand never left her stomach, thumb stroking gentle patterns that made her heart flutter. I know the timing isn't ideal, she said softly, with Morrison and Project Phoenix. The timing is perfect, he interrupted. This? His hand pressed gently against her stomach. This is everything I never let myself hope for. A child with a woman He broke off, but Kaylee's heart raced at what he'd almost said. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a message from her FBI contact. Evidence secured. Moving on facilities tonight. Stay safe. Isael read it over her shoulder, his arm tightening around her. It's almost over. But Morrison's still out there, she reminded him, and now he's escalating. Let him. Isael's voice held that dangerous edge again. He threatened my wife, endangered my child. When this is done, there won't be enough pieces left of him to fill a prison cell. The doctor's office was already cleared by their security team when they arrived. An hour later, Kaylee lay on an exam table, gripping Isael's hand as the ultrasound technician moved the wand over her stomach. And there, the technician pointed to the screen, a strong heartbeat. Kaylee felt tears slip down her cheeks as she watched the tiny flutter. Beside her, Isael made a sound she'd never heard before, something between a laugh and a sob. Everything looks perfect, the doctor assured them. About 8 weeks along. Would you like to hear the heartbeat? At their nods, she flipped a switch. The room filled with a rapid whooshing sound. Their baby's heartbeat, strong and fast and real. Isael brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a fierce kiss to her knuckles. When she looked at him, she saw tears in his eyes too. Thank you, he whispered. And she knew he meant for more than just the baby. Back in the car, heading to the office where crisis teams waited, Kaylee studied her husband's profile. The joy of their news hadn't erased the tension in his jaw, the worry in his eyes. We're going to be okay, she said softly, laying her head on his shoulder, his arm curved around her protectively. Yes, he agreed, his voice steel and velvet. Because I'm done playing defense. Morrison wants a war. I'll give him one. No one threatens my family. The possessive heat in his voice made her shiver. This was a side of Isael she'd glimpsed before, but never so clearly. The predator beneath the polished exterior, the man who would burn the world to protect what was his. And as his hands settled once again over their growing child, Kaylee realized that somewhere between contract clauses and corporate warfare, she'd given him her heart completely. The question was, when the dust settled and the danger passed, would he want to keep it? Chapter 8. Unexpected Joy. The morning sun streamed through the penthouse windows as Kaylee stood before the full-length mirror, studying her reflection. At 12 weeks pregnant, her figure was still mostly unchanged, but she swore she could see a slight curve to her abdomen. Her hand rested there protectively as she remembered the events of the past month. The FBI raids on Morrison's facilities, the media frenzy over Project Phoenix, and most importantly, the way Isael had transformed since learning about the baby. Gone was the careful distance he'd maintained, even after they'd grown closer. Now his touches were constant, possessive, a hand at her waist during meetings, fingers laced with hers under conference tables, arms pulling her close every night as they slept. He'd even moved her desk into his office, unwilling to let her out of his sight after the brick incident. You're going to be late for the ultrasound. His voice came from the doorway, warm with affection. She turned to find him watching her with that intense expression that had become more frequent lately, like she was something precious he couldn't quite believe was his. "Just thinking," she said softly as he crossed to her. His arms slipped around her from behind, hands covering hers on her stomach. "About how different everything is from what we planned." She leaned back against his chest. When you signed that contract, he interrupted gently. "You saved me from becoming exactly what they called me, the Ice King, cold and untouchable." His lips brushed her temple. "Now look what you've done to me." She turned in his embrace, straightening his tie in their familiar gesture. "What have I done to you?" His eyes darkened as they searched hers. "You've made me hope again." The simple honesty in his voice made tears prick at her eyes. Damn pregnancy hormones. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed with a message from security. The car was ready. The drive to the doctor's office was quiet, both lost in thought. Kaylee's hand remained entwined with Israel's, his thumb stroking absent patterns on her skin. The past month had brought major developments in the Project Phoenix case, evidence of illegal chemical manufacturing, proof of Morrison's connection to Hartford Global, and most damning, a paper trail leading straight to James Hartford's private accounts. But Adrian remained elusive, her role in the conspiracy still unclear. The thought made Kaylee's protective instincts flare. Her free hand moved to her stomach, making Israel's grip tighten. "Stop worrying," he murmured. "The FBI has Hartford in custody. Morrison's assets are frozen. It's almost over." "I know," she sighed. "I just can't help feeling like we're missing something." He brought their joined hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "Today is about our baby, not them. Let me give you that at least." The tenderness in his voice made her heart flutter. These moments of vulnerability from him were becoming more frequent, each one a gift she treasured. At the doctor's office, now familiar with their security protocols, they were quickly shown to an exam room. Kaylee changed into a gown, trying to ignore how her hands shook slightly. Something felt different today, anticipation or anxiety, she couldn't tell. Israel helped her onto the exam table, his touch gentle but sure. When the technician entered with the ultrasound machine, his hand found hers immediately. "All right, Mrs. Chosen." The technician smiled, applying the gel. "Let's see how your little one is doing." The room filled with the now familiar whooshing sound of their baby's heartbeat. But then, "Oh!" The technician's eyes widened as she moved the wand. "Well, this explains why your hormone levels were so high." Kaylee's heart raced. "What is it? Is something wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," the technician assured her, grinning. "But listen carefully." They did, and there it was, not one heartbeat, but two, slightly out of sync. "Twins," the technician announced proudly. "Two healthy babies, right on track for development." Kaylee's free hand flew to her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. Beside her, Israel had gone completely still. "Twins?" His voice was rough with emotion. "You're sure?" The technician turned the screen, pointing out two distinct shapes, two tiny hearts beating strong and fast. "Absolutely sure. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Chosen. You're having twin boys. Boys, two of them." Kaylee looked up at Israel and found him staring at the screen with an expression of pure wonder she'd never seen before. His hand trembled slightly in hers. "I need—" He swallowed hard. "I need a moment." He stepped out of the room quickly, leaving Kaylee concerned until the technician smiled knowingly. "Don't worry. Dads often need a minute when they find out about twins. It's overwhelming in the best way." When Israel returned a few minutes later, his eyes were suspiciously bright, but his smile was radiant. He moved immediately to Kaylee's side, pressing a fierce kiss to her forehead. "Thank you," he whispered against her skin. for everything. The drive home was filled with a different kind of silence, one buzzing with joy and possibility. Isael's hand rested on her stomach the entire time, as if he couldn't quite believe their miracle had doubled. In the penthouse elevator, he finally spoke. "I need to tell you something." Kaylee's heart skipped at his serious tone. "What is it?" Instead of answering, he guided her to the living room couch, sitting close enough that their knees touched. "When I had Marcus draw up our marriage contract," he began slowly, "I thought I was protecting myself, creating a safe, controlled way to meet the board's requirements while keeping my heart locked away." She reached for his hand, offering silent support as he gathered his thoughts. "But you—" He lifted their joined hands to his chest, pressing them over his heart. "You didn't just meet the requirements. You didn't just give me an heir, now 2 heirs. You gave me back my ability to feel, to trust, to dot." He broke off, emotion making his voice rough. Kaylee felt tears building again as she understood what he was trying to say. "To love," she whispered. His eyes met hers, intense and vulnerable. "Yes," he admitted softly. "I love you, Kaylee. Not because of the contract, not because of the babies, but because you walked into my life and made me whole again." Joy burst in her chest like sunshine through clouds. "I love you too," she said through happy tears. "So much." He pulled her into his lap, kissing her with a passion that made her head spin. When they parted, both breathing heavily, he rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he murmured. She laughed softly. "We are married." "No." He pulled back to meet her eyes. "Marry me for real. No contracts, no business arrangements. Just us, our boys, and love." "Yes," she whispered, happy tears falling. "Yes, to all of it." He kissed her again, tender and fierce at once, his hands cradling her still flat stomach where their sons grew strong. The moment was interrupted by his phone buzzing urgently. The FBI, they'd found something in Hartford's files. Reality crashed back in, but differently now. They weren't just fighting for the company anymore, but for their family's future, their son's future. Isael's expression hardened as he read the message, but his touch remained gentle on her stomach. "We end this," he said firmly, "all of it. Then we focus on what matters, you and our boys." Kaylee covered his hands with hers, feeling the strength of his love surrounding her. "Together. Always," he promised, and sealed it with a kiss that felt like coming home. Later that night, as they lay in bed with his hands protectively cradling her stomach, Kaylee realized that their contract marriage had given them something no legal document could have predicted. A love story written in board meetings and business deals, in quiet moments and shared battles, in twin heartbeats and promises of forever. And somewhere across town, unbeknownst to them, Adrian Hartford was making plans that would test that love to its very limits. Chapter 9. Confessions Under Fire. The first warning came silently, a slight flicker in the penthouse's security monitors at 2:43 a.m. In their bedroom, Kaylee stirred, one hand protectively covering her 16-week pregnant belly, where their twin boys grew strong. Her analyst's instincts, honed by months of watching for threats, registered the abnormality even before the alarms triggered. "Isael," she whispered, reaching for her husband. The bed beside her was empty but still warm. He'd been working late in his study, reviewing Project Phoenix files. The security panel by their door flashed red. "Breach detected. Server room level." Her tablet lit up with cascading alerts. Firewall breaches, security protocols failing in sequence, emergency systems activating throughout the building. This wasn't a random hack. This was a carefully orchestrated attack. The bedroom door opened, and Kaylee tensed until Isael's familiar silhouette appeared. Even in crisis, he moved with controlled precision, already changed from his sleep clothes into tactical gear she hadn't known he owned. Stay calm, he said quietly, moving to the wall safe hidden behind their wedding photo. Security teams are mobilizing, but someone's disabled the elevator protocols. They're coming up. The Project Phoenix files? She asked, already knowing the answer. Being accessed directly from our servers. He removed a handgun and what looked like body armor. They're erasing their tracks. Kaylee's mind raced as she quickly changed into practical clothes, noting how Israel positioned himself between her and the windows. After last week's ultrasound revealing their twins, his protective instincts had intensified. Now, with active threats in the building, she could practically feel his tension. "Marcus is 5 minutes out with tactical support," he reported, checking his phone. "But we're not waiting. The panic room in my office—" "No," she interrupted, moving to her laptop. "The server room first. I installed a backup system after the brick incident. If I can't stop them erasing files, I can at least—" The lights died, plunging them into darkness, broken only by emergency strips along the floor. In the distance, they heard elevator machinery grinding to a halt. "They've cut main power," Israel said grimly. "Auxiliary systems in 10 seconds. Kaylee counted down in her head, using her laptop's light to gather essential drives and tablets. 8, 7, 6. At 3, her email pinged. The message preview made her blood freeze. "Adrian calling. Did you really think those twins were natural? Check the Project Phoenix fertility enhancement data. Time to see what our formula can really do." Understanding hit like a physical blow. "The twins," she breathed, hand pressing against her stomach where their sons moved restlessly, sensing her distress. "They engineered—" "No." Israel's voice was fierce as he pulled her close. "Those are our boys. Nothing they did." Footsteps in the hallway silenced him. Multiple sets, moving with military precision. "The office," he whispered. "Now." They moved silently through the penthouse's dark corridors, Israel's hand steady on her lower back. The emergency lighting cast everything in eerie red shadows, making the familiar space alien and threatening. Just as they reached his office door, the window at the end of the hall exploded inward. Black-clad figures repelled through, weapons raised. "Get down!" Israel shoved her through the doorway as bullets sparked off the wall. She rolled instinctively, protecting her stomach while scrambling behind his massive desk. More windows shattered. They were being breached from multiple sides. Through the chaos, she heard Israel returning fire, covering her position. The sounds echoed strangely in the darkness, punctuated by shouted commands and the crunch of broken glass. "Quite a security system you've installed, Chosen." Drake Morrison's voice cut through the noise as he stepped through the ruined window. "But then, you always did prefer to handle things personally." "Stay behind me," Israel ordered, positioning himself between Kaylee and the intruders. His voice turned arctic as he addressed Morrison. "You're under federal investigation. Your assets are frozen. What's left to gain?" "Everything." Morrison's smile was cold in the emergency lights. "The FBI has Hartford, yes. They've frozen our visible assets. But Project Phoenix?" He gestured to the armed men surrounding them. "This is just the beginning." "The fertility drugs," Kaylee said from behind Israel, her analytical mind still working despite the fear. "You were testing compounds, among other things." Morrison's eyes fixed on her stomach, making Israel tense further. "Though I must say, you proved a more successful test subject than we anticipated. Twins on the first try. Rather impressive results." Pure rage flashed across Israel's face at the implied threat to their children. His gun never wavered from Morrison's chest, but Kaylee felt his other hand reach back, checking her position behind him. "If you've hurt them," he growled, every word promising violence. "Oh, the drugs are harmless enough," Morrison assured them. "Perfectly engineered to increase multiple births without side effects. Your sons are fine." His smile turned predatory. For now. The threat hung heavy in the air. Kaylee's mind raced through options, remembering the backup servers, the hidden files, the evidence trail she'd built over months. All they needed was time. Her hand found Israel's back, pressing twice. Their silent signal developed over months of boardroom battles. His slight nod was imperceptible to anyone else. "Why the elaborate scheme?" she asked, keeping Morrison talking. "Why not just a hostile takeover?" "Because normal methods don't work on him." Morrison nodded at Israel. "The Ice King, untouchable and unbeatable in business. But everyone has weaknesses. His was Adrienne, until she proved less useful than anticipated." "She was working with you from the start," Israel realized, voice hard. "Our entire marriage was a setup." "She had ambitions beyond being a CEO's wife," Morrison agreed, "though I must say her replacement has exceeded expectations." His eyes fixed on Kaylee again. "You've done what she couldn't, given him an heir, earned his trust, made him vulnerable." "You're wrong," Kaylee said quietly, her free hand finding Israel's back again. "Love isn't weakness." Morrison laughed. "No? Then why is the great Israel chosen standing here with a gun he won't fire because he's terrified a stray bullet might hit his precious wife and unborn sons? Because," Israel's voice turned deadly soft, "he's waiting for his wife's signal." Kaylee squeezed his back twice, confirmation. In one fluid motion, she dropped and rolled right as Israel fired, hitting Morrison's shoulder just as the penthouse's sprinkler system activated. The sudden deluge caused chaos. Through it, she heard Marcus Chen's tactical team breaching from multiple entry points, their coordinated assault taking Morrison's men by surprise. "Kaylee!" Israel's hands found her in the confusion, pulling her up and against him. "Are you hurt?" "We're okay," she assured him, guiding his hand to her stomach where their sons kicked vigorously, agitated by the excitement. "All of us." His arms tightened around her, one hand spanning her belly protectively, while the other kept his weapon trained on Morrison as FBI agents secured him. "I thought," his voice was rough with emotion, "when I saw them threatening you and our boys." She pressed her fingers to his lips. "You protected us, like always." His eyes searched hers, intense, even through the falling water. "I love you," he said fiercely. "Contract or no contract, manipulation or no manipulation, what I feel for you is real." "I know," she whispered, rising on tiptoes to kiss him softly. "I've always known." One of the twins kicked particularly hard, making them both laugh despite the tension. Even in chaos, their sons reminded them of what really mattered. Marcus approached, looking apologetic despite his tactical gear. "Building secure. We found the server room team, Hartford's personal security. They were trying to destroy evidence." "Trying?" Kaylee asked. Marcus smiled grimly. "Your off-site backups proved very useful. The FBI has everything they need now." Israel's arm tightened around her waist. "And Adrienne? In custody as of 10 minutes ago. Picked up, trying to board a private jet to Singapore." Relief made Kaylee's knees weak. It was over. Finally. Truly over. "Take me home," she whispered to Israel. "Not here, the house in the Hamptons. I want peace for a while." He pressed a fierce kiss to her temple. "Anything you want. You and our boys are all that matters now." Later, in their secure SUV heading east out of the city, Kaylee curled into Israel's side. His hand rested protectively over their sons, who had finally settled after the excitement. "They're calm now," she murmured. "Fighting spirit," he said softly, "like their mother." She looked up at him, studying his beloved face in the passing lights. "Does it bother you that they used those drugs?" "No." His answer was immediate and firm. "They may have engineered the timing, but these boys are ours. Every kick, every heartbeat, every moment of joy they've brought us. That's real. That's ours." As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of hope, Kaylee felt their sons move again. Gentle now, peaceful. Whatever Morrison and Adrienne had planned with their fertility drugs, they'd failed in one crucial way. Love couldn't be engineered or controlled. Real love, like the kind growing between them and their unborn sons, could only be chosen, cherished, and protected. And in that, they had already won. The Hamptons' house waited ahead, promising sanctuary and peace. Behind them, the FBI was unraveling Project Phoenix's full scope. But in that moment, with Israel's arms around her and their boys safe beneath her heart, Kaylee knew the real victory had nothing to do with business or revenge. They had fought for this love, chosen it despite manipulation and danger. Their sons might have been engineered by their enemies' schemes, but they would be born into a family forged by something stronger than any contract. A love that had transformed both ice and fear into unshakable trust. And that was a victory worth all the battles it had taken to win it. Chapter 10. Twin Blessings. The Hamptons' estate was bathed in early morning light when Kaylee's water broke 3 weeks before her due date. She'd been in the garden enjoying the peace they'd found here over the past months, while Israel worked remotely, keeping the company running from his home office to stay close to her. "Israel," she called, one hand bracing against a rose trellis while the other cradled her prominent belly. Their sons had been particularly active all morning. She should have recognized it as a sign. He appeared almost instantly, as if he'd been watching from his office window. One look at her face, and he was moving, swift and sure. "Now?" he asked, already supporting her weight. She nodded, managing a smile despite the first contraction building. "Your sons are apparently as impatient as their father." His laugh was slightly shaky as he helped her inside. Everything was prepared, hospital bags packed, security protocols in place, their private medical team on standby. After the confrontation with Morrison 3 months ago, they'd left nothing to chance. "Marcus," Israel spoke into his phone while guiding her to the car. "It's time. Full security protocol alpha." The drive to the private medical facility was a blur of increasing contractions and Israel's steady presence. He never let go of her hand, even while coordinating with security teams and medical staff. "I've got you," he murmured repeatedly, pressing kisses to her knuckles. "You're doing so well, my love." Despite the pain, Kaylee couldn't help smiling at the endearment. The Ice King had melted completely in these past months, showing her a tenderness that still took her breath away. The medical facility was already locked down when they arrived, security teams visible at every entrance. Their FBI liaison had insisted on maintaining protection until Morrison and Adrienne's trials were complete. "Mrs. Chosen," Dr. Reynolds greeted them as they entered the maternity suite. "Let's check on these boys of yours." The next few hours passed in a haze of monitored contractions and careful preparations. Israel never left her side, alternating between fierce protectiveness when speaking to security or medical staff and incredible gentleness with her. "Talk to me," Kaylee gasped during a particularly strong contraction. "Distract me." He pressed a cool cloth to her forehead, his other hand still firmly in hers. "Do you remember our first morning in the Hamptons, after everything with Morrison?" She nodded, focusing on his voice. "You were standing on the beach at sunrise," he continued softly, "wearing my shirt over your swimsuit, hand on your stomach, looking so peaceful. That's when I knew." "Knew what?" she managed between breaths. "That I wanted to spend every sunrise for the rest of my life with you." His voice roughened with emotion. "Not because of the contract, not because of the babies, but because you make every moment better just by being in it." Tears mixed with sweat on her cheeks. "Save the romance for when I'm not trying to push out your children," she teased weakly. His laugh was interrupted by Dr. Reynolds returning. All right, Mrs. Chosen, you're fully dilated. Time to meet these boys. What followed was intense and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Isael held her hand through every push, whispering encouragement and love. When their first son's cry pierced the air, his breath caught audibly. "He's perfect," Dr. Reynolds announced, placing the squalling infant briefly on Kaylee's chest before whisking him away for quick checks. And his brothers right behind him. 4 minutes later, their second son arrived, his cry just as strong as his brother's. Kaylee collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted but elated as the medical team cleaned and examined both babies. "They're both healthy," Dr. Reynolds assured them. "Good size for twins, 6 pounds 2 ounces and 6 pounds even. Ready to meet them properly?" Isael helped Kaylee sit up as the nurses brought their sons, now cleaned and swaddled. The moment the first baby was placed in her arms, everything else fell away. All the conspiracy, the danger, the contracts and business deals that had brought them here. There was only this, their perfect boys, their love, their family. "Aiden," she whispered to the baby in her arms. They'd chosen names weeks ago. Isael cradled their second son, looking down at him with wonder. "Ethan," he murmured, then laughed softly as tiny fingers gripped his thumb. "Strong already, like their mother." "Like both of us," she corrected, looking up at him with tears of joy. "We did this together." His eyes met hers, full of love and amazement. "We did everything together, from that first meeting in my office to this moment right now." He shifted carefully to sit beside her on the bed, arranging Ethan so both twins were close together. "You gave me so much more than an heir, Kaylee. You gave me a family, a real one." She leaned against his shoulder, watching their sons, Aiden with her green eyes, Ethan with Isael's steel grey. Both had their father's dark hair and her delicate features, perfect combinations of them both. "Your sister's outside," a nurse informed them softly, "along with Mr. Chen and your security team. They're rather insistent about meeting the newest Chosens." Isael looked to Kaylee for permission. At her nod, he called them in. Rain entered first, tears already flowing as she saw the babies. "Oh, big brother," she whispered, moving to kiss Isael's cheek before gently touching each nephew's tiny hand. "They're beautiful." Marcus stayed by the door, professional as always, but his smile was genuine. "Congratulations, sir. Ma'am, security reports all clear, and the FBI has doubled patrols until you're ready to return home." "Thank you, Marcus," Isael said warmly, "for everything." Their friend, for he had become that through all they'd faced together, nodded in understanding. As their small circle of trusted people took turns holding the twins, Kaylee watched Isael. He never moved far from her side, his attention constantly split between their sons and her comfort. The fierce protectiveness she'd first glimpsed during their wedding night had evolved into something even stronger, a deep, unshakable devotion to his family. Later, when they were alone again with their sleeping sons in their hospital bassinets, Isael pulled something from his jacket pocket, a familiar velvet box. "I had this resized," he said softly, opening it to reveal her engagement ring, the one he'd given her that first day. "I thought, maybe it's time to make things official. No contracts this time, just us, our boys, and a promise of forever." Kaylee's heart swelled as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "I thought we were already official," she teased gently. "The first time was a business arrangement that turned into love," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her knuckles just above the ring. "This time it's a choice, my choice, to love you and our sons for the rest of my life. No conditions, no terms, no end date. Just love," she whispered, drawing him down for a tender kiss. "Just love," he agreed against her lips. A small cry from one of the bassinets interrupted them. Isael moved immediately to check on the twins, lifting Aiden with practiced gentleness. "Hungry already?" he asked softly, bringing their son to Kaylee. "Just like your mother, always thinking ahead." As she settled Aiden to nurse, Ethan began fussing too. Soon, Isael was seated beside her on the bed, cradling their second son as he waited his turn. "I never thought I could have this," he admitted quietly, watching their children with wonder. "After Adrienne, I thought love was just another business transaction, something to be negotiated and managed." "And now?" Kaylee asked, shifting Aiden to her shoulder to burp him. Isael's free hand came up to cup her cheek. "Now I know it's the most powerful force in the world. Strong enough to break through every wall, heal every wound, create miracles like these." He nodded to their sons. "Strong enough to turn a contract into a covenant." As if in agreement, both twins made small, contented sounds. Kaylee laughed softly, trading babies with Isael so Ethan could nurse. "We should send Morrison a thank-you note," she mused. "Without his schemes, we might never have found each other." "I would have found you," Isael said with quiet certainty. "Maybe not as quickly, maybe not as dramatically, but souls like ours, they're meant to meet." Looking at their family, this miracle born from business arrangements and conspiracies, but transformed by genuine love, Kaylee knew he was right. Some love stories started with grand gestures or chance meetings. Theirs had started with contracts and conditions, with walls built high and hearts carefully guarded. But that only made its triumph more beautiful, a reminder that real love couldn't be engineered or controlled, only chosen, cherished, and allowed to grow into something stronger than any force trying to break it. As their sons drifted to sleep in their arms, Kaylee met Isael's adoring gaze and knew that this was just the beginning of their real story together. Chapter 11. Web of Deceit. 3 months after the twins' birth, Kaylee sat in her restored office next to Isael's, surrounded by financial records that told a story far deeper than simple corporate espionage. Aiden and Ethan slept peacefully in the adjacent nursery, a space that represented everything Adrienne had tried and failed to achieve. Her laptop pinged with an alert from one of her tracking programs. The document that appeared made her blood run cold. Adoption papers from 20 years ago, sealed by court order. Adrienne Reynolds, age 7, adopted by the wealthy Reynolds family after 3 years in foster care. "Isael," she called softly, mindful of the sleeping twins. "I found something different." He appeared in her doorway instantly, attuned to her voice after months of marriage and parenthood. His expression shifted as he read the documents over her shoulder. "She never mentioned being adopted," he said quietly. "There's more." Kaylee pulled up additional files. The Reynolds were major shareholders in a fertility clinic chain. They adopted Adrienne after failed IVF treatments. She highlighted a particular section. "What's the clinic's name?" "Phoenix Medical Group." Understanding dawned in Isael's eyes. Project Phoenix wasn't just about corporate takeover. No. Kaylee brought up more records. "Look at these incorporation papers for Morrison's shell companies. They're dated 3 years ago, before you even met Adrienne. But the witness signatures, these are dated exactly 1 week after the Reynolds fertility clinic chain went bankrupt," Isael noted, leaning closer to read. "After failing FDA approval for experimental treatments. Treatments designed to guarantee multiple births." Kaylee's hand moved protectively toward the nursery where their sons slept. Adrienne wasn't just working with Morrison for money or power. This was personal. Isael sank into the chair beside her desk, running a hand through his hair. "She approached me at that charity gala. Said it was coincidence. It wasn't." Kaylee's fingers flew across the keyboard, connecting more dots. "The Reynolds lost everything in the clinic bankruptcy, but Adrienne had already made connections through their social circle. She knew you were looking to expand chosen industries into medical research. The perfect target. Isael's voice held a mix of anger and something like pity. A company with resources to fund research. A CEO she could manipulate through marriage. But it went deeper than that. Kaylee pulled up psychological evaluations from Adrian's childhood. Look at her adoption interviews. Every foster home, every potential family. She was obsessed with proving her worth through success. The Reynolds chose her because she was already exceptional at 7. Top grades, perfect behavior. The perfect daughter to replace the children they couldn't have, Isael realized. And when their fertility empire collapsed, she decided to rebuild it herself, but bigger, more ambitious. Kaylee brought up more files. Morrison wasn't just a business partner. His mother ran one of the Reynolds clinics. He understood Adrian's drive to prove herself, to fix what her adoptive parents had lost. Her laptop pinged again. An email from an encrypted source. The message was simple. Family isn't about blood. You of all people should understand that, Adrian. She's monitoring our searches, Kaylee whispered. She wants us to know. Before Isael could respond, her computer flooded with documents, private journals, medical records, research notes spanning decades. My parents chose me because I was perfect. Adrian's voice came through their office speakers, making them both tense. Then they lost everything trying to help other families have perfect children, but they were thinking too small. Security teams burst in, tracking the signal, but Adrian continued. Project Phoenix isn't just about fertility drugs or corporate takeover. It's about control, the power to give or withhold the one thing everyone wants, family. Her laugh was bitter. You think you won because you have your perfect twins. Those boys are just the beginning. Our formula works, and soon every desperate couple, every failing fertility clinic, every adoption agency will come to us. Isael moved to the nursery door, positioning himself protectively as Marcus and his team swept the offices. Kaylee followed, needing to be close to their sons. You don't understand family at all, she told Adrian's disembodied voice. It's not about perfection or control. It's about love. Love, Adrian scoffed. Love is weakness. Look what it did to my parents, bankrupted by their love for potential children. Look what it did to the great Isael Chosen, melted by a contract wife and engineered twins. You're wrong, Isael said quietly, deadly. Love made me stronger, made us stronger. The twins stirred, perhaps sensing the tension. Aidan's small whimper had both parents moving instantly to comfort him. How touching, Adrian's voice dripped sarcasm. But while you're playing happy family, our research continues. Those backup files you think are safe? Check again. Kaylee rushed to her computer, finding entire servers wiped clean. But something felt off. Wait, she said suddenly. These deletion patterns, they're familiar. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, following a hunch. The original Project Phoenix files, the ones stolen from the FBI. They weren't stolen at all. Understanding dawned. You planted them, she told Adrian. Let them be stolen so we'd focus on recovery while you launched something bigger. Very good, Adrian purred. I trained as a financial analyst too, remember? Before the Reynolds lost everything. I know how minds like yours work. But Kaylee was already tracing the real data trail, using skills she'd developed over months of cat-and-mouse games. The new research facilities, the mass production plans, they're not in Singapore. Kaylee, Isael warned, recognizing her tone. They're right here, she continued, triumph in her voice. Hidden in plain sight. The old Reynolds Clinic buildings, converted under shell company names so obvious no one looked twice. The silence on the speakers was deafening. That's why you're making this personal, Kaylee pressed her advantage. Because in a few minutes, FBI teams will raid those facilities. Your parents' legacy, Your life's work, all exposed. You understand nothing, Adrian hissed. Those clinics were my home, the only place I ever belonged, and you, with your perfect little family, had to fight for every bit of it, Kaylee interrupted firmly, against your schemes, your manipulations. But that's the difference between us, Adrian. I chose love. You chose control. Control is the only thing that lasts, Adrian's voice turned cold. But don't worry, you'll understand soon enough, when your perfect twins start showing unexpected effects from our treatments, when every mother who wants guaranteed multiples comes begging for our formula. It's over, Israel cut in, his voice pure ice. FBI teams are moving now. Morrison's already in custody. Even James Hartford is cooperating. James? For the first time, Adrian's composure cracked. He knows what this means to me. He knows you used him, Kaylee said quietly. Like you used everyone. Because you never learned the real meaning of family. The speakers went silent. Moments later, Marcus received confirmation. Adrian had been arrested trying to destroy evidence at one of the clinic sites. In the sudden quiet, Ethan began to fuss. Kaylee lifted him gently, breathing in his sweet baby scent as Azael cradled Aiden. She actually pitied us, she said softly, thought love made us weak. She never understood. Israel pressed a kiss to Aiden's dark hair. Real family isn't about perfect children or guaranteed results. It's about this, choosing each other every day, through every battle. The twins, as if sensing the moment's importance, reached for each other across their parents' arms. Even at 3 months, their bond was obvious, not because of engineered genetics, but because of the love that surrounded them from conception. We should help her, Kaylee said suddenly, not legally. She has to face consequences, but she needs to understand about family, about love. Israel studied her with tender amazement. This is why I love you. Your heart stays open even after everything. Our boys deserve to know that story, she replied. How love transformed a business contract into a real family. How their Aunt Rain welcomed me instantly, how Marcus became more than just an employee. And how their mother's brilliant mind and beautiful heart melted the Ice King completely, Israel added softly. As their sons drifted back to sleep, safe in their parents' arms, Kaylee reflected on Adrian's words about perfect families. She hadn't understood. Perfection wasn't in genetic engineering or guaranteed outcomes. Perfection was in these moments. Twin boys created by science, but nurtured by love, a marriage arranged by contract but sustained by choice, a family forged in conspiracy's fire but tempered by unwavering trust. And as FBI teams dismantled Project Phoenix's facilities, as Adrian faced the ruins of her controlled world, true family love had proved itself once again the most powerful force of all. Chapter 12. Full Circle. 1 year after the twins' birth, Kaylee stood in Izel's office, their office now, watching the sunrise paint the city skyline in shades of gold. Behind her, framed photos covered one wall, the twins' first Christmas, their family vacation in the Hamptons, candid moments of Israel with their sons. The Ice King had become the most devoted father, his transformation complete. The door opened and Israel entered, impeccable in a charcoal suit but with a stuffed dragon peeking from his pocket, Ethan's favorite, apparently smuggled into his jacket during morning cuddles. "The boys?" she asked, smiling at the toy. "Safe with Rain at home. Security confirmed." He moved to kiss her softly. "Ready for this?" Before she could answer, Marcus appeared in the doorway. "She's here." Adrian Hartford sat in the conference room, designer clothes unable to hide the strain of a year in custody. Her perfectly manicured nails drummed the table as she waited, flanked by FBI agents. "Remember," Israel murmured as they approached. "She'll try to manipulate us. That's all she knows." Kaylee squeezed his hand. She doesn't know us at all." They entered together, united and strong. Adrian's eyes narrowed at their clasped hands, at the obvious love between them. "Well," she said smoothly, "isn't this cozy, the happy family?" "Why are you here, Adrienne?" Isael's voice was ice. "Your lawyers said you had information about Morrison's plans. Straight to business." Adrian smiled coldly. "Some things never change, though clearly some things do." Her gaze raked over Kaylee. The Ice King melted by love. Who would have thought? "The information," Kaylee prompted firmly. "About the stolen formulas." "Ah yes, Project Phoenix." Adrian leaned forward. "Did you really think it was just about fertility drugs? About giving you twins to secure the succession?" "We know it was bigger," Isael stated. "Mass production, illegal compounds." "Testing," Adrian corrected. "Your precious sons were just the beginning. We needed to prove the formula worked, that it could guarantee multiple births. Think of the market. Desperate couples, fertility clinics, surrogate agencies." "Human experimentation," Kaylee finished, disgusted, "without consent or oversight. For a greater purpose." Adrian's mask slipped, showing real conviction. "Do you know how many families we could help? How much money there is in guaranteed multiple births?" "At what cost?" Isael demanded. "Using my company, my marriage, my children as test subjects." "Using everything available," Adrian shot back. "Like you taught me, the Ice King, remember? Everything is a transaction, everyone has a price." "You're wrong." Kaylee's voice was quiet but firm. "Love isn't a transaction, family isn't a commodity, and Isael was never what you thought." "No?" Adrian laughed bitterly. "Then why did he marry me? Why did he marry you? Contracts, conditions, carefully negotiated terms." "Because you taught me to fear love," Isael interrupted, "to treat it like business. But Kaylee—" He looked at his wife, eyes softening. "She taught me to trust it instead." Adrian's composure cracked slightly. "How touching, but irrelevant. Morrison has the formulas. Production starts next month in Singapore. By the time your FBI friends find the facility, it'll be too late." "You mean this facility?" Kaylee pulled up documents on the conference room screen. "The one FBI teams are raiding right now, or these?" More documents appeared. Every shell company, every hidden account, every connection between Morrison, Hartford Global and Project Phoenix. "Impossible," Adrian whispered. "Those records were encrypted." "You forgot who you're dealing with," Isael said coldly. "My wife isn't just the mother of my children. She's the best financial analyst in the business, and unlike you, her loyalty can't be bought." "We found everything," Kaylee confirmed. "The original conspiracy with Morrison, the long-term plan to infiltrate chosen industries, the illegal research, the unauthorized trials, all of it." "Morrison's been arrested at the Singapore facility," Marcus added from the doorway, "along with James Hartford and their entire research team." Adrian's face went pale. "You don't understand. I needed this. James, he's leaving me. The company's failing. I need my help," Isael finished. Understanding dawned. "That's why you're really here. Not to share information, but to ask for help saving Hartford Global." "You owe me that much," she said desperately. "After everything we shared." "I owe you nothing," Isael stated firmly. "What we shared was a lie. Every moment, every promise, all part of your scheme with Morrison." "And now," Adrian's eyes turned calculating again, "you'll let Hartford Global fail? Think of the stockholders, the employees." "Already handled," Kaylee interjected. "Chosen Industries is acquiring the legitimate parts of Hartford Global. The employees are protected. The illegal research facilities will be converted to proper medical research centers." She smiled slightly, focusing on ethical fertility treatments, ironically. Adrian stared at them, seeing at last what she'd never understood. True partners, stronger together than any scheme or manipulation. "Take her back to custody," Israel told the FBI agents. "We're done here." As Adrian was led out, she paused. "You really love her, don't you? This wasn't just another contract." "No," Israel agreed, pulling Kaylee close. "This is everything you never understood about love. It's not a weapon or a weakness. It's strength, choice, trust, and family," Kaylee added softly, thinking of their sons at home. Adrian's shoulders slumped in genuine defeat as she was led away, not from the legal consequences, but from finally seeing what she'd never had, real love, freely given and returned. Later at home, Israel and Kaylee lay on a blanket in their garden, watching their sons play. Aiden was attempting his first steps, while Ethan crawled determinedly after butterflies. "Happy?" Israel asked softly, pulling her closer. "Complete," she corrected, tilting her face up for a kiss. "Though, what?" She guided his hand to her stomach, still flat but holding a new secret. "Getting more complete every day." His eyes widened. "Really? You're sure?" "Doctor confirmed it yesterday," she smiled. "No fertility drugs needed this time, just us and love." His kiss was passionate, joyful, full of promises for their future. When they parted, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers in their special gesture. "I love you," he whispered. "Contract wife, real wife, mother of my children, partner in everything." "I love you too," she replied. "Ice King, devoted father, my strength, my heart." A squeal of triumph made them look up. Aiden had managed 3 wobbly steps before plopping down, grinning proudly. Ethan abandoned his butterfly chase to clap for his brother. As they moved to gather their sons close, celebrating the small victory as a family, Kaylee marveled at their journey. From cold contracts to warm embraces, from business arrangements to boundless love. Their enemies had tried to use marriage as a trap, children as chains, love as a weapon. Instead, they'd found the greatest truth of all, that real love, chosen and cherished, was the strongest force in the world, strong enough to melt ice, heal wounds, create miracles. And as the sun set on their perfect moment, painting the garden in shades of promise, Kaylee knew their story was really just beginning, for love, real love, had no ending at all. Subscribe if you liked.
Thanks for watching!